Look, my story, I mean, I'm one of four founders, and I have a very proud heritage from Lebanon. And we were discussing this offline, and we both come from similar regions. And there are probably two ways I would start it. So definitely wouldn't start with me being born. It would start with probably, what I've been gifted in terms of heritage or gifts or from my ancestors. So I think Lebanese culture is very unique. Lebanese people have been entrepreneurial and seafaring actually for a very long time. So we've been trading with different continents for 3,000 years. I think they've done a DNA test on people from our region, which is in the Eastern Mediterranean, for those who don't know, and found that the DNA is almost identical to the ancient Phoenicians and Canaanites who were in that region 3,000 years ago. So
Wow.
this is like, and when you read about those people, these people have always not had many resources in their country, and therefore had to go and be almost traders that's connecting East and West. And you'll find that those people have traveled all over the world and established trade routes. And it's funny that you look at it today, that has not changed at all. So Lebanon is still a country where the majority of Lebanese are outside the country versus inside.
Crazy.
And in many ways, it's been normalized, right? That we are not confined to that land, even though it's a beautiful land and it's full of extremes and amazing. It's an amazing country, but our culture is very global, and we keep coming back, of course, but it's global, and entrepreneurship has been at the center of it. Education has also been very important in our cultures, and all of it comes from instability from where we live, but also from this risk taking and this exploration gene, I think, that we have, and that has been nurtured over time, and that I see in me in many ways, and see it in my family, of course. Another way to start it would be probably with my maternal grandfather, who was actually born in pre-1948 Palestine, and in that country, had to leave that country in 1948, and with his family and with a lot of people from where he lived, and had to start off from scratch in Lebanon, which is where I met my grandmother, and that's kind of the connection there. But he started off with nothing at the age of 25. He was educated, he was resilient, he was smart, but he had to build everything from scratch. And those values that he, I guess, built his family on and raised us with are in many ways the example that I have. And I've been gifted with, me and my sisters, my mom, my parents. We've had amazing role models, and their story is extremely important, and what gives us strength every day. That, and obviously the, I guess, encoded gene of Lebanese people, and I think you can probably relate as an Armenian as well.
Absolutely. And what do you study?
So I was not very academic.
Yes.
So I was quite young. We were born in London during the Civil War in Lebanon. My family moved to London. I came back when I was 6 to Lebanon, and then I skipped 2 classes because of some interesting difference in the systems and the education systems. So I moved from the British to the American system. Skipped 2 classes. So I was quite young. So I finished high school, and I wasn't particularly good at school, but I was quite young, so I guess I cut myself a bit of slack there. But I wasn't very academic. I wasn't really inspired by, any particular subject. But what I did become quite obsessed with was music. So I became a drummer in high school, and I actually don't know who I was before I became a drummer. I really don't know. I was this, very shy kid, young for his class. He's got his friends and all that, but very little confidence. In many ways, music and drums is what gave me a voice, and what made me start building a bit my confidence. And it was my first real passion and love, and it still is. It's in my bones. I'm always thinking about it, but that's what I wanted to study. So, but growing up in Lebanon, you don't really get those opportunities. Your parents, are, for your own sake, right, are not going to encourage you to go be a musician. They're going to tell you get a safe degree and go and build a career and all that. So I had to make them happy. So I did study something. I started off, I wanted to do pre-med at first, and then that didn't work out. So then I moved into just business administration, marketing and finance. And that was what I studied. But in reality, I was like, I'm just going to finish this degree and then go become a musician. That's really what I wanted. And
Crazy,
I almost had a scholarship to do that after university, but then I realized that probably isn't the life that is destined for me. I have a lot of love and admiration for musicians, but I felt like I needed to also explore the world of business as well. So I decided to, not pursue that.
It's always still part of you, right? And it's crazy. I see on your Instagram, and you really can throw down.
I
bro.
try. I have to
it makes so much sense.
I have to express it, yeah.
And just the way you think and speak in rhythms, and you just like, I can just tell, he knows the pocket. This guy knows the pocket. Tell me, how do you end up in South Africa, and then how do you, if you could lead that into how you meet the founders as well?
Yeah, of course. So I had so I was living in Dubai, and that was the first part of my career. So I did banking, and then I did management consulting, and that basically means we worked with the executives of big companies on their strategic problems, and would basically I was doing that in quite an entrepreneurial company in Dubai. But one of our opportunities was to open in South Africa and to work with large telecom companies like MTN and Cell C and the like. So I was shipped off on a project to South Africa. I was tired of the Middle East at the time. I needed a change. South Africa isn't an obvious place, by the way, for Lebanese people to come and establish themselves. So I decided, okay, let me just go and explore and discover, and that felt like an interesting opportunity. So I landed here, and I was put on a project with my co-founder, who was my colleague at the time, Katlejo, and we started working together. We worked well together. We actually bonded over music and culture and a whole bunch of things, became really good friends, and started talking about doing something together in South Africa at some point. We didn't know what. South Africa at the time was also very optimistic. This was like 2009, 2010, so World Cup, growth, all that stuff. But fell in love with the country, like, as you know, and as everyone who visits and revisits here, this place is amazing. This place is quite unique. It's like a hidden gem. There's nowhere like it. And I felt like this was going to be a good balance between my Middle East type life, which was all about work, and a life here, which was a lot more about nature, a lot more about just, I guess a lot more balance I find in this country. So I felt like I needed to spend more time here, and so Katlejo and I both, after a couple of years, decided to leave our consulting firm and come and just try and build something. And so two of our friends also came together. So the four of us ended up together at a similar kind of juncture. Yeah. So we had very similar values, but we were not all from, I guess, we didn't have the same skills or the same careers. We had an interesting combination of skills that we started to think, what could we do if the four of us came together and tried to put our skills to work? And we went from everything from something in the wine business to clothing to ultimately payments.
Serious?
Yeah.
Oh, so it wasn't like clear cut. You guys saw the gap. You were like, that's what it is. We know.
Well, that happened, but it wasn't like we quit our jobs because this opportunity was so big. No, we quit our jobs because we were tired of that
jobs.
of jobs. We couldn't see ourselves succeeding by going through that route. We needed to do something more creative, and all of our careers were kind of very straight, kind of finance and business, and there wasn't room to be creative. And the only place I thought I could be creative was actually to start something, and so that's a lot of where that came from. But yeah, we had no clue we were going to land on this opportunity.
How does that happen? Like, who comes up with it? How do you explore the first idea? What's the first sort of, is it payments? What's the gap?
Look, I mean, so on the one hand, we were spending a lot of time with entrepreneurs in the hospitality space because we were on sabbatical. And so we were sitting there in coffee shops and in bars and in clubs, and loved, connecting with entrepreneurs in that space and just learning about their business. Cape Town itself was also very special because a lot of the economy is also powered by independence. So very inspired by that, the creativity, the, just people wanting to build things. And the entrepreneurship, obsession, I mean, it's like I mentioned, it's in my family. I knew I was going to build something, but to also have the opportunity to build something for builders was even more exciting. The payments opportunity came when there were companies like Square in the US that had already democratized payments to these SMEs. At the time, it was a dongle that you plug into a cell phone.
Yes.
And so that opportunity had already been launched, and we saw that it was successful. It hadn't existed here properly. So then we asked ourselves why. And then we looked at the numbers and we saw, the gap is huge. There's so many cards in the market. 70% of people had cards, which is very high for a country with this type of GDP per capita, for instance.
Wow.
But then on the SME side, there's like only 200,000 out of 3 million, 4 million SMEs in the country. So it was crazy that the gap was so wide. So we dug into it, and we asked a lot of people, and everyone was like, almost, and that's why you got to find your own answers. Because when we ask people, why is it like that? They're like, oh, no, the regulation. Oh, no, the risk for these SMEs. Oh, the distribution. All these typical excuses, I would argue. They're not baseless, right? These are real challenges, but they are excuses, because the only way is to actually try using first principles, which is almost starting from the basis, the most basic principles, almost of physics, and asking yourself, why does this gap exist? And then the deeper you go, the more you realize that, there's a lot of protectionism. The economy is quite closed. Yes, there are real challenges, but the current way of thinking within, let's say, banking did not have the solutions. And so we had to come from a different angle. We came from the telecom space, and we were like, why can people get a handset and a SIM card very easily, and everyone can get it, and it's over 100% penetration. But when it comes to getting a card terminal, which is not that different if you think about it, there's KYC, there's hardware, there's some kind of connectivity, there's all these things. Why was it so much harder? And then that's when you get the interesting answers, because you start asking the right questions. And the answer was there was no really good reason. The regulation was there, the technology was there. The funding, you can argue, wasn't really there, but you can get the funding if you have something compelling. So we just realized that nobody was really trying to do it in the way that would be most successful. I think because that would just require the path was just going to be a little bit too difficult and too risky. And I would argue this country's I think people haven't been rewarded much for taking risk here. I think it's a country that has been, in many ways, look at how many people go into, for instance, a CA degree, which nothing wrong with that at all. It's a great degree, but it kind of shows you, how much the economy is kind of geared towards sustaining and towards structuring and protecting,
as opposed to innovating. And
correct. Yeah. So you need to take a bit of risk, but nobody, you don't get very rewarded for it, because even the ones who took a lot of risk in the last 20 years, most of them, they ended up selling to a corporate way before their time. And so in many ways, Yoco is one of the few companies in South Africa that is purely independent, no corporate money at all.